In this session, we are going to learn merchandising calendar, otherwise known as a calendar planning. Calendar planning is a very important part of merchandising activity. Calendar plan is nothing but time and action plan. So, once the process of merchandise development starts, so there is a need for having a time and action plan, so that what action to be completed by what date. So the merchandiser has to set in the ball rolling. So he has to set the deadlines for each and every activity, so that later on he can follow up whether the process is going as per the plan or not, or are there any hurdles so that the process is getting delayed. In case of any delays or any problems, the merchandiser needs to solve the problem and facilitate the process, so that ultimately the process completes as per the plan, and ultimately at the end of the day the right merchandise is in right place at right time with right price. So in order to ensure this basic tenet of the merchandising process, the merchandising planning, so the basic function of the merchandiser, the calendar planning is very much essential. So the importance of planning and control is great, particularly in view of today's global environment. So the time and action plan or the calendar plan is very vital for success. So the many companies like Nike, etc., all major global players in apparel and other areas, they follow this time and action plan. So time and action plan is a very essential activity. In order to be effective in this global marketplace, there are many factors that must overcome. So in a globalized environment, so each and every company tries to be successful. So in order to be successful, you must take care of many factors. One of them is the one communication. So there should be a proper communication with various external stakeholders, the vendors and others, business associates. So there will be clear and vital communication should be there, and it should be ensured, and difference in cultural and business values. So one should understand the difference in the cultural values of the business people located in different political, geographical areas and linguistic differences. So one should be sensitive to these cultural values and also the business values. So unless there is a thorough understanding of the differences in the cultural and business values is there, so being successful in a globalized world as it is today is very difficult. And similarly, there is also a difference there with respect to the production lead times and shipping schedules. So different countries and different places in the different geographical regions have different types of production, different levels of efficiency and effectiveness, and different infrastructure with respect to the shipping and other logistics related infrastructure. So because of these various differences in the production and in the with respect to the logistics and transportation like shipping infrastructure, etc., there is varying lead times. So lead times are not common or standard across all these geographical, political, geographical and the linguistic areas. So they vary from country to country, region to region, etc. And also, as you deal in a globalized business environment, so there is also need to understand the role of the governments in the overseas. So as you cross business, the political borders, so the laws applicable will change, the legal system will change, the business policies will change. So there is a need to understand the differences across political borders with respect to the culture, with respect to the language, with respect to the legal framework, with respect to the business policies, rules and regulations that are applicable to the business processes and all and the related activities. So, a detailed planning and a fail-safe control system is vital for successful apparel merchandising. So, that really calls for the calendar planning. So, and if you look at the other front, that is the consumer demand side, there is a changes always happening in the consumer demand side. Retailers and consumers demanding frequent offering of more and more styles. So, that means the customers are demanding change. They want new styles, new fashions, new trends always in the store. So, they are looking for a change very frequently. So, that means the retailer also needs to get his act accordingly. So, that means from 2 seasons per year, there is some retailers are going to 4 seasons per year, some are even going to 12 offerings per year. That means every month some new merchandise is landing up in the store. So, the development cycle also getting shrinking, and there are retailers who are working with a development cycle of 6 months or even less. So, by failing to plan, you are planning to fail. That means if you in this kind of scenario where there are changes are happening and customers are very demanding, consumers are demanding changes very fast. So, if you fail to plan, you will definitely it means that you are planning to fail. Then comes the strategic planning. So, strategic planning is the broadest type of planning. So, strategic planning is a broad, comprehensive, long-term planning about allocation of resources and overall company vision. So, strategic plan pertains to achieving the vision of the company. Vision of the company relates to the how the company sees itself. The management sees the company 10 years or 20 years down the line, how the company it should be and where it should stand, how it should project itself. So, that kind of a vision, and to realize that vision, what are the how the resources are going to be allocated. So, it all requires strategic planning. Strategic planning is a long-term comprehensive plan to realize your vision and to realize the long-term objectives of the company. Departmental action plan to support the company's strategic plan and coordinate with other departmental plans. So, in the strategic planning, there is a hierarchy of plans. First, there is a corporate plan. So, corporate plan gives direction to the overall growth, overall development of the corporation. So, a corporation may have many different strategic business units, many products in the business. So, how the company should grow, how the corporation should grow over a period of 20 years, whatever is the vision time. So, that means where to invest more, what businesses have got more potential for growth, what businesses have got the uh, uh, potential to continue with its current phase of growth, and what businesses they don't see any potential for growth, rather there is a decline in the growth. So, accordingly the allotment of resources has to be planned. That means where to invest, where to continue the minimum, the developmental where to invest more, so that you see the growth in those areas, and maintenance investment to maintain the business in some areas, and divesting and coming out of the businesses where you don't see much future there. So, this kind of corporate strategy would go to the next level below that is the business level strategies. So, each strategic business unit, so in tune with the corporate strategy, they will implement business strategies. Suppose the business strategy of a particular SBU, the corporate strategy envisages that there is a lot of potential to grow in that business So there is a lot of future in that. So the corporate strategy envisages more investment in that SBU so that it can grow faster, it can grow and capture the market. So if that is the case, the business strategies of the unit would follow the corporate strategy, and the business strategy would be the strategies of for growth. So how to grow faster, how to increase the business of the unit. So to that extent, they will plan business growth strategies for the business. So then we have in the hierarchy the functional strategies. So above all we have a corporate strategy, below that we have business level strategies, and below that we have functional strategies. So we have corporate strategies, below that we have business strategies, and following that would be functional strategies. So as we discussed, if there is a growth strategies being followed by the business, a particular business unit, consequent to the corporate strategy envisaging that, so then we have the functional strategies, so of that particular SBU will also be oriented towards growth. For example, then the marketing division of that company would undertake intensive strategies to increase the sales, to increase the business of the that particular business unit. Similarly, the human resources strategy, the functional strategy with respect to human resources would be to hire the human resources which are required to pursue the intensive business growth policies. So to that extent, they will be working towards recruiting the human resources which are required to mobilize the business, to increase the business, to grow the business aggressively. Similarly, the accounts and financial functionals would look at investing more and more in the business development. So the functional strategies that way would follow from the business level strategies. So that way the strategic planning has got corporate strategy and followed by business level strategies, followed by functional level strategies. So strategic planning that way is a total company commitment to achieve coordinated vision. That means all the departments, all the employees in a company have to get committed to the implementation of strategic plans so that they can achieve, they can realize the vision of the company. So that means it is like looking at where we are now. Where are we now? So where the company is standing, what is the business volume of the company, to whom it is catering, what product line, what product portfolio, what business portfolio the company is having now. From here, where do you want to go? Maybe 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, where you want to stand. So what kind of a business portfolio you are looking at, what kind of a product portfolio you are looking at. So what are the target market customers you are looking at, what is the kind of business expansion you are looking at. So increasing the business with respect to the target markets, reaching out to the more markets, reaching out, increasing your strengthening your marketing mix. So all these things, resource allocation, so they all go in tune with your strategic plans so that you realize your vision. So for this purpose, all the departments in the corporation have to work together, they have to work in a coordinated manner, and all the employees, each and every employee should understand the vision and mission of the company, the objectives of the company, and they should work wholeheartedly towards it, and with full commitment towards the achieving the strategic goal, towards realizing the vision of the company. So in order to get there, we need to look at the strategic plans and implementing them. So one of the things that we have been talking is the calendar plan. In that calendar plan, particularly the one kind of activity that is to be planned is marketing calendar. So marketing calendar is basically a time and action plan for marketing activity. So it is the central mechanism to all merchandising and manufacturing activities. So the marketing calendar is like a central mechanism, central activity to all the merchandising and manufacturing activities and plans. So, planning drives merchandising, product development schedules, and sales appointments with important customers, merchandise, the manufacturing planning and shipping schedule. That means as per the plan of the marketing plan, so all other plans will get driven by that. So, whether it is a merchandising plan, whether it is the manufacturing plan, whether it is a product development plan, all are tuned to your basic marketing plan. So, key elements of marketing calendar. So, key elements of marketing calendar involve: one is line preview dates by season, so prototype and pricing, and second one is line release dates with season, all sales samples ready for sales team. That means there are two important steps in the marketing calendar. So, one is the preview of the samples and second one is the release of the samples for the sales team. So, these two are key activities in a marketing calendar. So, other elements of the marketing calendar involve start shipping date, end shipping date. That means by what time the shipping of the merchandise to the stores would start, and by what time the shipping of the merchandise to the individual stores will stop. Similarly, what are the weekly sales plans? So, how much you expect to sell, and by store wise, what are the sales plans, and what are the total sales plans for the season, and what are the total sales plans for the month wise. So, all that will be finally broken down into weekly sales plans and weekly shipping plans. So, then comes the merchandising calendar. So, merchandising calendar is of great importance because ultimately it leads to the product management and merchandising development and control. So, primary control tool in an apparel company is the merchandising calendar or the calendar planning of merchandise. So, this is designed to control key elements, or key events. The merchandising calendar is designed to control the key events needed to get right apparel products in the right mix at the right price to the customer at the right time. So, that means basically the merchandising calendar is to achieve the objective of the merchandising, that is making the right product available with right price at right time and in right place. So, that is ensured, or that is facilitated by merchandising calendar. So, it is also known as a key events calendar, or it can also be called line development calendar, line calendar. It may even be called critical path calendar or critical task calendar. So, these are the other names given to the merchandising calendar. This control tool sets forth the starting and completion of dates for all critical events necessary to achieve a successful season. So, the control tool is very important because it sets the starting and completion dates. So, that means the merchandising calendar, also we call it as a time and action plan. It is basically giving what is the date by which a particular activity should start, and what is the date by which that particular activity should complete. And so, the starting date and the completion dates are given for each and every critical activity in the merchandising process. So, each and every critical activity, so by starting date and ending date, so that means the duration, what is the duration of that activity is also thus planned. So, for all critical events, so it is necessary to achieve a successful season. So, if you want to have a successful merchandise, successful retail season, it is very essential that you have the proper time and action plan or proper merchandise calendar plan in place, and it is being implemented in spirit and in letter. So the basic ingredients for a successful apparel season are as follows. So if you want the successful completion of a apparel merchandise season, so the following are important. Manufacture what consumers want. So you have to ensure that whatever you are manufacturing, that means whatever products, whatever merchandise you are manufacturing is ultimately is that is what the consumers want. So this is a very crucial element. So if you do not get success here, you will be a total failure. That means you should manufacture the merchandise which customers are likely to buy. You should manufacture a merchandise which customers want to buy. So if that is not there, whatever you manufacture and it is not what the customers want, then what will happen? The product will become obsolete and nobody will buy that, and then your investment will be locked in the form of inventory. So finally you will be forced to sell it out at a markdown price, leading to the losses and other things. So manufacture what consumers want. That is very important. So next thing is deliver the proper product mix on a timely basis. That means you have to bring the right product at right time. Time is of very important and it is essential, because in fashion business and in apparel business, the fashions, the trends will be changing with time. So as the time changes, the trends would change, the fashions would change. So unless you bring the merchandise in right time, the merchandise will lose its value. So the merchandise will have its full value and you can sell the merchandise with proper price. What is the price that is originally intended only if the merchandise is in the store at the right time. If it is delayed, if it is missing the season, then the value of the merchandise is reduced tremendously. So it is very essential that you deliver the right product on a timely basis at right time. Maintain low raw material, work in progress and finished goods inventories. That means working with less inventories by following just in time principle. That means you have your inventories less with respect to the raw material. That means you are procuring raw material in a fashion that it just comes before its requirement. So and it comes in a timely fashion, and the quantities of raw material coming is suited and it is tailor made to the quantities that are required in the production. So that means everywhere you are working with less inventories, whether it is the fabrics, whether it is in the inventory of cuttings or inventory of sewn products and inventory in the packed stage. Everywhere you are working on optimal quantities. So that means by working with less inventories and working in optimal inventory level at the stage of raw materials, from the stage of raw material to the stage of finished and packed goods, you will ensure that your inventory costs are reduced significantly. So that means you save a lot of money on the inventory management. So thereby your operational expenses would come down, your success would increase. The financial success would economically will be more viable by doing a process. So but that requires a proper calendar plan, a proper time and action plan, so that you maintain a low raw material, a low work in progress and low finished goods inventories. Then another requirement or ingredient for a successful apparel season is accommodate changes. So you need to accommodate the changes. Your plan should be flexible enough to accommodate the changes that are happening on the fashion front, the changes that are happening on the marketing front, the changes that are happening on the product development front. So you need to accommodate changes. You should keep that flexibility in your calendar to accommodate the changes as and when they are happening. So that is again very important. Next is critical path method. Critical path method. So critical path method is again a very important process in the operational research, and it involves proper management of, so that means the whole process, the time taken by whole process, the success of whole process would depend on the critical path, one particular critical path which may be a bottleneck for the entire process. So you need to manage critical path properly. Determining the important functions necessary to perform an activity or series of activities required to achieve an overall objective. That means you have to, in the whole process of merchandising, you have to determine what are the important functions. So which are important, because that will greatly affect the success or the timely completion of the overall process, and it will ensure the fulfillment of overall objective. Whether an activity that follows a particular function can be successfully take place without the critical function being accomplished. So that means a critical function is very essential for other processes to complete. So without completing the critical path, you will not be able to go to next stage of the process. So that means critical path is again important. Analyzed to determine time required to accomplish. So most of the total process would critically depend on the critical path. So how much time the critical path is taking. So how do you manage that? How can you better that lead time taken by the critical path? So if we can manage that, if we can reduce that, the overall time taken can be reduced, the overall process can be improved. So management of critical path is very crucial. So you have to identify the critical paths and manage them. A typical merchandise calendar may have 35 to 60 functions for a product line. So if you take a product line, the number of activities or number of functions that may be there in a merchandise calendar may be starting, maybe at the minimum it may be 35, at the maximum it can go up to 60 functions. So at 4 seasons per year, if you assume that you are working on 4 seasons per year, so that means that there can be around 140 to 240 tasks that must be performed within a year. So if you look at a 4 season per year, so that the overall number of tasks that are required to be managed in a year can be anything at minimum 140, it can go up to a maximum of 240 tasks per year. If a company has 4 product lines and 10 offerings per year, the number of tasks will jump to 1400 to 2400 tasks per year. So that means, so if you take 4 seasons and if you take the number of offerings, so to 10, so that means the number of tasks that have to be completed in 1 year can vary anything between 1400 tasks to 2400 tasks. So it highlights the number of tasks that have to be monitored, that have to be planned by calendar plan. So that way the calendar plan becomes very important. So the number of tasks, it also highlights the complexity in the calendar planning, the complexity involved in the process, the complexity involved in the calendar plan. As much is the process is complicated, so much will be the complication with, or how much will be the complex or the number of tasks in the process. So then how these can be managed? So then comes the role of computer into picture. Role of computer application in merchandise calendar planning. So a computer enables, you have the database and the spreadsheet. That means using a computer, the merchandiser can make a spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet will have activity and start date and end date and duration. So for each and every activity in the merchandising process, through a spreadsheet, the merchandiser can create a spreadsheet of time and action plan or the calendar plan for a season. So using this spreadsheet, the project scheduling, the scheduling of the programs, scheduling of the tasks, scheduling of the critical activities can be done very easily. So once you create a template, when you have a template of activities in the created in the computer, so the assigning start date, end date and duration for a particular product, for a particular merchandise becomes easy, and creation of a weekly or daily task list which allocate tasks for departments or personnel responsible for their time completion. That means, so for each and every activity, so what is the start date and what is the end date, what is the duration, and so on a weekly basis the merchandiser can follow it up, and he can ensure that you can follow with the concerned department and he will ensure timely completion. So for example, if you take the fabric sourcing, for fabric sourcing, yes, the merchandiser can fix what is the start date on which the merchandise order has to be, the fabric sourcing order has to be released, and by what date he expects the sourcing to be completed. That means the complete order quantity will come in a house, and in between what then, so that gives what is the duration for this activity. Within that you can also identify subtasks. So by what time you expect the supplier to send fabric sample for approval. So by what time you expect fabric sample to be approved by the buyer. By what time you expect what, or you plan to start the bulk production of the fabric. What time you expect the initial lot of fabric to come to in-house, and by what time you expect the completion of the fabric order. So like this, for the you can give start date and end date for each and every activity and create a calendar of activity and calendar plan through a spreadsheet in the computer. So that that will greatly help in the follow up. So using a computer programming, you can on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, you can identify what are the activities that need to be followed up, what are the activities that need to be started, what are the activities that need to completed in that week. So accordingly you can follow up. That means the merchandiser can follow up with the concerned department. Suppose in this week the fabric sourcing order has to be released. So you can, merchandiser can check back with the fabric department whether the fabric sourcing order is released or not. So if it is released, it's okay. If it is not released, what is the problem? So then try to see that problem is removed and the order is released. Similarly, so in a particular order, the fabric sample is expected to come this week for approval. So then you check again, the merchandiser can check based on the information he has got from the computer report. You can see, you can check with the fabric department whether the fabric sample is going to come or it has come or not for approval. If it is come, it's okay, and whether it has been forwarded to the buyer for approval or not, that can also be followed up. If it is not has come, then you have to check with the fabric department why the fabric sample has not come, what is the problem, and find a solution for that. So facilitate the process. So the merchandisers using this calendar plan, using the time and action and the spreadsheet, he will know what is to be expected to be done in that week, and accordingly can follow up. So as per for a particular order, the initial lot of fabric is expected to come in house. So again the merchandiser can check with the fabric department whether the fabric has arrived or not. So like this spreadsheet, the merchandiser calendar plan would help greatly the merchandiser in following up the processes, whether it is on time or not, it is happening as per the plan, or is there any problem. If there is any problem, the merchandiser has to see that the process is facilitated. The process is facilitated so that the process is going on, problem is solved. And finally, he has to coordinate with various different departments. If it is a process related to fabric sourcing, he will coordinate with the fabric department. Suppose it is related to sewing. Sewing is expected to be started on this day, whether it has started or not. So whether it is completed or on time or not, that he has to coordinate with the sewing department. Similarly, cutting, washing, embroidery. So for all these critical activities in the total merchandise plan, he can actually follow the spreadsheet and see that whether each and every activity is going as per the plan or not. Similarly, product development, range development, he can check with the designer whether where the process is happening, whether it is complete as per the schedule or not. So all that would be greatly facilitated by the merchandise calendar. So important element of pre-season planning, that is development, execution and maintenance. So important element of pre-season planning, an activity that coordinates product development, sales expectations with material purchases and production capacities. So it is a important activity. That means basically it is the coordinating the product development activity on one hand, sales expectations and material purchases and production capacities. So as the product is getting developed and you have samples, so you see, go for a road show and see what are the orders you are getting from the buyers. So based on the orders that are coming from the stores, so you coordinate sourcing of the raw materials and then producing the product. So this is again greatly facilitated by the merchandise calendar. A merchandising calendar should be re-evaluated after each season and adjusted when necessary. That means once you make a merchandising calendar at the beginning of the season, it doesn't mean it is final. So you need to keep changing, making changes in the plan as per the requirement. As the changes are happening in the internal and external environment of the company, so you need to keep relooking at the activities and what is the time taken for those activities. Sometimes the activity may be taking less time in view of the change situation, so that you can make accordingly, reduce the time taken. Some activity may actually take more time because of the change in circumstances. So looking at the changes that are happening in the environment, whether it is internal environment or external environment, so a merchandiser needs to keep relooking at the merchandising calendar and re-evaluate them and make necessary adjustments. That means you need to keep the merchandise calendar dynamic, changing with the requirements. It has to be a dynamic plan, changing with the requirements, rather than a static plan, once you made, that is final and leave it. So that it cannot happen. So it has to be relooked from time to time and keep doing necessary changes as and when necessary. So that way the merchandise calendar plan can be kept more dynamic. Similarly, the critical control tool should become more accurate each year with input from the previous season. So as you gain experience in the calendar plan year after year, so your evaluation of the plan should be, your feedback from the previous plan should be incorporated in the planning the next season. So whatever learnings you have done, that should be taken forward. So that means in the previous season, so what is your experience with respect to the various activities? For example, the activity related to sourcing the raw material, sourcing the fabric, sourcing the accessories. Similarly, the activities related to product development. So how the process has gone. So what were the learnings from that? So these learnings from the season have to be taken as a feedback for the planning the next season's calendar plan. So line plan summary. Line plan summary provides guidelines for line development teams. So developing a product over a particular line, So how to develop, what to do, what not to do, these guidelines are given by the line plan summary. So line plan summary the guides and makes focused efforts. It ensures that there are focused efforts in one direction. The elements of line plan summary involve the number of fabrics in the line by the product group. That means how many different products are being used in the line by the product groups. So that means as many number of products, as much of management is required. So the number of fabrics in the line being used in a product group. Similarly, there are number of styles in the line by the product group. So what are the different types of fabrics being used in the line, and what are the different styles being used in the line, and number of constructions in the line in a product group. So what are the different garment constructions being used in that product group. So basically the number of different fabrics used in a particular product group, and the number of styles in a particular line or product group. Similarly, number of SKUs, stock keeping units, in the line by the product group. So all that information will be there in the line plan summary. Then we have sales forecasts. Production orders are placed before initial sale orders. So there are production orders. So they even before the initial sale orders are obtained. So then we keep the sales forecasts gives style ranking system or pragmatic forecasting based upon the experience. So they have these two systems, style ranking system or the pragmatic forecasting. The pragmatic forecasting is based on the experience. The first one is shelf stock plan. In shelf stock plan, once a realistic sales forecast is developed, the merchandiser must apply forecast to providing customers with an appropriate mix of products on timely basis. This requires integration with marketing plan, which establishes the desired weekly shipments. The resulting shelf stock plan establishes a schedule of product by style and quantity that must be available for shipping on a monthly and weekly basis. A proper style mix by SKU to provide the shippability is critical to effective shelf stock plan. The goal of a well executed shelf stock plan is to provide maximum shipment of customer orders with minimum inventory. Ideally, every garment that is received in shipping should be immediately applied to an outstanding order and shipped to a customer. The accuracy of a shelf stock plan directly affects production scheduling. So, how the shelf stock plan is made, the accuracy would be directly be affecting production scheduling. So if the shelf stock plan is very accurate and very effective and efficient, so will be the production scheduling also. Similarly, it would also affect shipping. The shipping activity would be greatly influenced by shelf stock plan. If the accuracy of shelf stock plan is great, then shipping efficiency and effectiveness also will be good. Similarly, fabric purchasing. The fabric purchasing process also will be greatly affected by the accuracy of shelf stock plan. Another thing is raw materials and finished goods inventories. The inventories of raw materials, whether it is fabrics or accessories, and finished goods, the garments, sewn garments, ready-made garments, these inventories also would be directly affected by the accuracy of shelf stock plan. The shelf stock plan is critical to good customer service and maintaining low inventory, which results in high inventory turns and low inventory carrying costs. So that means if the shelf stock plan is good, and it will be beneficial to the company in terms of good customer service, and it would also help maintaining a low inventory. Because of the maintaining of low inventory, the inventory carrying costs would also be less, and inventory turnover would be higher. So both will be increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of operations and reduce the cost of operations. Similarly, we have another report, that is style status report. Once the pre-production process is complete, it is time to schedule and monitor the production process. Whether or not merchandising is responsible for sourcing production, it has a vested interest in the results of the processes that take place after the line has been developed and put on sale. The report that monitors the progress of sales and manufacturing is the style status report. That means the style status reports monitors the progress of sales as well as the manufacturing progress. This report takes many different forms in different companies. So depending on the company and its working system, the report may have different forms, different nature in different companies. In some companies, it is a series of reports. So while in others, it is a comprehensive database. So depending on the type of the company and type of system they are using, so this style status report can be one comprehensive database in some companies, and in some companies it can be a series of many reports. So it all depends on the type of the company. No matter how the report is developed, irrespective of the process used to develop the report, the function that it covers must be carefully planned and monitored. That means the functions that the report is covering, they have to be planned and monitored very, very carefully. The functions that must be covered are the following. So the style status report is expected to cover the following functions. One is actual sales against forecast by style and time period. So a study, a report on the what are the actual sales and what is the forecast, and is there any variation. So if there is a variation, what is the extent of variation. This can be generated by style wise, or it can also be generated in terms of the time period. In any particular time period, say monthly or seasonally, what is the actual sales and what is the forecast and what is the deviation. The another function that must also be covered in style status report is piece goods. Piece goods generally mean the fabrics, findings and trim purchases, delivery status and inventory positions against forecast by time period. That means you are looking at the fabrics and trim purchases and delivery status of these fabrics and trim purchases and inventory positions against the forecast by time period. So what was forecast, what was planned for each time period, and what is actual status with respect to these piece goods and trim purchases and the delivery status. So that is again another thing that must be covered in a style status report. The next important activity that must be covered is production authorizations, garments in process, finished goods inventories by style and time period. So with respect to style, what are the inventories with respect to the finished goods, how much is inventory in garments in process or work in process, or how much is authorized to be produced. So these can be data can be generated style wise and also time period wise. Another function that also could be covered in style status report is shipments against orders by style and time period. That means how much is shipped. So against orders. So what is the order? Order quantity and how much is shipped or when it is shipped. So this data can be generated by style wise and also time period wise. The next thing is order tracking. Continued globalization of the sourcing of apparel products leading to complex order tracking systems. Now we have global sourcing of apparel products across the continents. So that makes the order tracking process more important, at the same time more complex. As things are, the logistics are spreading across many continents, across overseas. So the order tracking system is becomes more and more important and also becomes more complex. So use of computers and technology and internet. So this process is, though it is complex and though it is getting more important and complex, it is being facilitated by the computer systems and technology. So using internet, using the ICT, information technology and all. So you can have a system where the order can be tracked, the progress of the order, the production progress and the sales progress and progress with respect to the product development, progress with respect to the manufacturing, progress with respect to the sales. So all this can be tracked easily using the computer systems and the internet. A successful handling of this tracking requires the interfering with other departments. That means the coordination from other departments. That means all departments should cooperate to give the information, to upload the information in the computers, so that the order tracking can be a successful affair. Now let us see an example of how merchandise calendar plan is made. So now we will be seeing a very simplified version of how the merchandise plan can be made. So we are taking an example of a menswear shirt, menswear shirt, and made of powerloom fabric, made of powerloom fabric. So if that with that basic assumption, now let us see how the calendar plan can be made. In general, first you work back the various activities and then finally you compile the activities and the duration required. So the first step is working back various activities, the time and action for various activities. So if you are looking at a summer season, a men's shirt for a summer season, so how the calendar plan can be made. So that means if it is a summer season, generally by 1st April the merchandise has to be in the store. Let us assume that by 1st April the merchandise should be in the store for display and sale. So naturally the 1st April, so merchandise in stores, merchandise in stores. So the merchandise should reach and should be available in stores by 1st April. So that means at least 1 week before, maybe by 24th March, the merchandise has to reach the warehouse of the retailer. So 24th March, so merchandise to reach retailer's warehouse. So the merchandise should reach retailer's warehouse by 24th March. So they will have 1 week time to work out the logistics from warehouse to the individual stores. So they can see what is the quantity to be dispatched to various individual stores. They can plan and execute the same. So they will have sufficient time, as well as some 1 or 2 days buffer also they will be having. So if the merchandise has to reach the warehouse of the retailer, the merchandise should be dispatched from the manufacturer, at least assuming that the manufacturer is in India, and so the logistics minimum, let us assume that it will take 1 week from manufacturer to warehouse. So and 2-3 days buffer. So naturally it works out to be some 10 days. So that means by 10 days before that, that means 14th March. By 14th March, dispatch of merchandise by the manufacturer. Dispatch of merchandise by manufacturer. So that means by 14th March, the merchandise should be dispatched by whatever may be the mode of transport, maybe by road or by train or by air, by sea, waterways. So the dispatch should be done by 10th March. So in order to it is 14th March. In order to dispatch the merchandise on 14th March, so by what time the production should be completed? So that means at least there should be 4-5 days buffer you can keep. So that means by 10th March, so production should be complete. So completion of production and packing. So if the production of merchandise is completed and packed and ready by 10th March, then they will have 4 days time to work out the logistics, to plan the how to dispatch, where to dispatch to various warehouses of the retailer, assuming he is a chain retailer. So that means by 10th March, the production, the garment production should be complete and completely done and packed. So for that, if you look at that, so generally assuming that for the chain stores, the quantity may be some 50,000 or more. So then what is the time taken for garment production or garment manufacturing? So generally minimum 1 month time may be required for garment manufacturing, which may involve the processes of the cutting and sewing, finishing, and there can also be a washing in between. So finally the packing. So the complete quantity to be go through all these stages of garment manufacturing, it may require a month or so. So and keeping some buffer in mind, so probably the production should start by 1st February. So that means we will be having 1 month and 10 days time. So that 10 days can be buffer for any unseen problems or delays in the production can be adjusted. So ideally by 1st February, production should start. February start of production of shirts. So the garments are the men's shirts that we are talking. They should be, the production should start by 1st February. So in order to start the production on 1st February, so by at least by 30th January, you should have all the materials required for production to be in-house, all the approvals to be in-house, and all the testing of piece goods should be completed. So that means in order to start production on 1st February, so what is to be done is by 30th January. So in order to start production by 1st February, so by 30th January you should have all the things ready to start the production. That is, fabric should be there completely in-house, preferably, and accessories should be in-house, and the testing of piece goods should be done, and all approvals, sample approvals should be also be completed. So then we can start production on the 1st February. So next, that means by 30th January, so you need to have fabric in-house and accessory in-house, and you should also have all approvals completed. So that is sample approvals, complete, testing of piece goods completed. So once you have fabric in house, accessories are in house, and sample approvals are there, and testing of piece goods, that is the fabric, is completed. That means everything is ready for production to start. So that means in order to start production on 1st February, you should have completed all these activities by 30th January. Then only production of garments on 1st February would be possible. So that means if you are expecting complete fabric to be in-house by 30th January, at least by 15th January, first lot of fabric should come in-house. First lot of fabric in-house. First lot of fabric in-house. So the fabric flow would start maybe around 10th to 15th of January, and it will continue for 15 to 20 days, so that the complete fabric would be in-house by 30th January. Then, so when should we, in order to get all these materials by 30th January, when should we start procuring the same? When should we start sourcing these fabrics and accessories? Since it is a power loom fabric, and so the procurement may take anything between 75 to 70 to 90 days. 70 to 90 days. So that means the order for procurement of fabrics and accessories should be released by 1st November, at least by 1st November. So 1st November, release of orders for procurement of fabrics and accessories, that is trims. So by 1st November, you should be able to release the orders for procurement of the fabrics and accessories. So then you have a clear cut time. The maximum time will be taken by the fabrics, because they are power loom fabrics. Sourcing them can take any time between 70 to 90 days. So from 1st November to 30th January, you have clear 90 days, and procurement of accessories may not take that much time. So it may hardly take 1 month or so. So that will be completed anyway faster. So in the meantime, the sample department, this approval of samples also has to be completed from the buyer, so that the samples are submitted, they may be approved or they may be revised with comments. Again you make samples with revision and improvements, and again submit, and like that the process may go on, maybe repeated twice or thrice, and finally you get the approval. Similarly, the fabric, when the first lot of fabric comes in house, you have to send that fabric to the lab for testing. So testing the various parameters of the fabric. So before the production starts, the positive reports of the lab should also be available. So these are the things these are the activities that you are expected to complete between 1st November to 30th January. So then, in order to start the release of orders on 1st November, so before that you should have completed the brand should the brand should have completed the buyer seller meet and road shows. So from 15th October to 30th October or 31st October, you can have buyer seller meet, also called road shows. Buyer seller meets or road shows. These are very important because during buyer seller meet and road shows, the quantity, the order quantities are finalized. So based on the order quantity, you work out on the requirement of the fabrics and accessories, and accordingly you release the order. So before you release the orders, you need to complete buyer seller meet and road shows and firm up the quantities. So what are the orders you are getting from the buyers? So based on that, you have to finalize the make the final quantity. Based on the final quantity of the garments, you have to calculate what is the fabrics and accessories required, and accordingly you release the order for procurement of the same. So 15th to 30th October, you have to conduct buyer seller meets and road shows to be completed during that 15 days time. So in order to conduct road shows and buyer seller meet from 15th October to 30th October, so by 15th October you should be ready with the production patterns and fabric patterns, so that the same can be showcased to the buyers and in the buyer seller meet. So the 1st October to 15th October, to 15th October, finalization of fabric designs or patterns. So they have to be finalized. So once these are finalized, so they will be shown, you can show them to the buyers, and accordingly you can get orders, the pattern wise and fabric design wise orders can be generated. So based on that, you work out on the requirement of fabrics and accessories, and the order procurement order can be released. So so once before that, that means as you finalize fabric designs and patterns by 15th October, starting from 1st October, so you have to complete the product development activity. So before that, you need to complete product development. So the product development activity, mostly done by the designers, has to be completed. The product development activity would involve the setting the the product category and deciding on the target market segment, deciding on the price range, deciding on the theme, finally developing a color story, and then developing the fabric boards, developing the style board, working out the costing. So, and finally finalizing on certain samples, going through the range meeting, getting approval in the range meeting, and whatever is approved in the range meeting, for that you develop production patterns and you go to the buyer seller meets once these things are different fabric designs are finalized for the approved samples. So, all this process of product development would take time. So, it is a time taking process. So, ideally it may take a minimum of 2 months, So, 1st August to 30th September. So, these 2 months the all product development activities would go through. So, it involves the product category, target segment, price range, then setting the theme, deciding on the theme, okay, deciding and developing a color palette, then development of the fabric board and development of style board and costing. So, these may also simultaneously involve mood board, theme board, etc. So, all this process minimum 2 months is required. So, ideally it should start 1st August or can be even started 15 to 20 days even before that. So, if you look at that, we are starting somewhere in the first week of August or last week of July, and finally we are completing the merchandise is coming to stores in the first week of April. So, almost we are taking 8 to 9 months the total time, but this can be reduced if you use fabrics whose sourcing time is much less. So, then the time can be shrunk to 6 months or so. So, it depends on what are the types of raw materials, what are the types of the accessories, particularly the fabrics being used in the product. So, this is how you work backwards. So, you have started with the date by which the merchandise should be available for sale in the store, and we have worked backwards when went to up to the product development stage. So, now after working all these things back, now the calendar plan or the time and action plan is now is decided from this. So, now you start from product development and go back to the stage where the merchandise is in stores. So, then you get the proper calendar plan and time and action plan. So, now let us see how the calendar plan can be made from what you have already listed the activities. So, now we will start with the product development. So, the first activity would be product development. Product development. So, the start date what we thought is 1st August and the end date could be 30th September. So, that means it is a duration of almost 2 months. So that is the product development activity. The next activity is finalization of the fabric patterns and production patterns. Finalization of fabric patterns and designs. So this we thought 15 days. So 1st October to maybe 31st, 15th October. 15th October. So finalization of fabric patterns and designs. So it will take around 15 days, 1st October to 15th October. So the duration is around 15 days. The next activity would be buyer seller meets. Buyer seller meets, also called road shows. So road shows and buyer seller meets can take any time between 16th October to 30th October, another 15 days. So it would also depend on the type of the retailer. If the retailer is very big time retailer, it may take even 1 month, the buyer seller meet. So here we are assuming a medium retail chain. So we are assuming that it will take 15 days for the buyer seller meet or the road shows. So but actual duration would vary depending on the size of the retailer and his business volume. So then before that we need to source the fabrics, sourcing of fabrics and accessories. Sourcing of fabrics, accessories, which you may also call trims. So as we discussed, the sourcing of fabrics, in this case it is a power loom fabric. It can take any day, any time between 70 to 90 days. So since we are starting releasing the orders on 1st November, so up to 30th January it is clear 90 days. So that is, so we start with 1st November and go up to 30th January or 31st January. So the order for fabrics and accessories can only be released after buyer seller meet or road shows, because the quantities will be finalized only during the road shows or the buyer seller meet. So the sourcing of fabrics and accessories, the process would start only on from the 1st November and it could go up to 30th January. Sourcing accessories may not take much time, it may be completed within 20 days or 1 month also, but sourcing of fabrics obviously would take more time. So that is why we have given a time of 90 days for this activity of sourcing fabrics, and simultaneously accessories could also be sourced during the same time. So the next, once the order for fabrics and accessories is placed, so we also need to get fabric samples approval. So the next activity would be approval of sample approval of fabric, in cases some of the trims also. So the sample approvals of fabrics and trims can be completed ideally in 15-20 days. So we take that this would be happening from 1st November to 20th November. So the approval process can go in several iterations. That means first a sample is submitted, the sample is sent to buyer. Buyer may accept or approve the same, or you may suggest some revisions. So again another sample has to be made with the incorporating the revisions suggested by the buyer, and those after doing developing another sample, so incorporating those suggestions, you again send it approval to the buyer. So the buyer may again approve it, or again he may suggest some improvements. Like this, the fabric samples and trim samples, the process would go in 2-3 times, 2-3 cycles before finally it is approved. So that is why it may take any time between 15 to 20 days time. In case it is getting delayed further, so that may also delay the process of procurement of the fabrics. So it is very essential that the merchandiser keeps following up and gets fabric sample approved on time without delaying. So because the bulk production of the fabric can start only after the approval of fabric samples. So no bulk production of fabrics can start without the approval of the fabric. So it is essential that the merchandisers keep good follow up on the approval process of fabrics as well as trims. So that is the activity of sample approvals of fabrics and trims. So 1st November to 20th November. Then we have testing of the piece goods. The next activity is testing piece goods. Testing piece goods. So the testing of piece goods, that is the fabrics, piece goods are fabrics, should be completed before the production of the garments. So only when you receive the first lot of fabric, then only you can start with the production testing of the piece goods. So ideally somewhere in the 1st January to 30th January. So during this period you have to complete the testing of the piece goods. Then once and during this period you also have to get the garment samples approval. Garment sample approvals, garment sample approvals. So garment sample approvals can also start from 1st November. Initially you can send fit samples for approval using a substituted fabric, and then there is the next stage in which you may have to get size sets approved. Size sets have to be in the original fabric. That means you have to wait till the first lot of fabric comes into warehouse. Once the first lot of fabric comes, so you make the size set samples and get them approved, so that you are ready for production. So that means you have to complete all these processes by 30th January. You may start from 1st November and complete by 30th Jan. So then if you look at by 30th Jan, we are having almost everything ready. That means the fabrics will be there, accessories will be available, approvals are there in place, garment approvals, testing of piece goods is completed. So that means the order is ready for production. You can start with the garment production. So the next activity is garment production or garment manufacturing. garment production. So garment production can start from 1st February and complete by 10th March. By 10th March. So generally the garment production may take around a month time, and keeping some buffer time in place. So you can go up to 10th March. That means you have a clear 40 days time for the production of the garments. So this will be a sufficient time. Even if there are some 1 week to 10 days delays also, there may not be any problem. Still you are on your deadlines are safe. So that means you are keeping buffer wherever possible and going ahead with that. So that means the garment production should be completed by, so production, it means cutting, sewing, finishing, washing if it is involved, everything is complete, and garments are fully in a packed stage by 10th March. So we said the garment production, so the duration we said it will start with from 1st February and complete by 10th of March. Complete by 10th March. So we are taking around 40 days for the production process. So the garments will be produced and kept ready in a packed state by 10th March. So that is the duration of 40 days. So the next activity would be logistics and transport. So merchandise transport and logistics. So the merchandise now is ready for dispatch. So they can plan the dispatch and work out the logistics and keeping a buffer of some 3-4 days. So you can expect that merchandise can be dispatched by 14th March. So from 14th March it can be dispatched by 14th March, and it may reach the warehouse of the retailers. It can reach the warehouse of the retailers maybe within a week. So take it 10 days by 24th March. So that means the transport and logistics would take around 10 days. It is expected to take around 10 days. By 24th March, the merchandise will reach the various warehouses of the retailer. So the merchandise has now reached retailer warehouse. From there it has to be dispatched to the individual stores. So dispatch to individual stores. So the activity dispatch to stores. Dispatch to stores could be 25th March to 28th March. So the stores would have the merchandise by 28th. So by around 4 days from warehouse to warehouse will be generally nearer to the stores. So they will have regional warehouses. So the merchandise can be dispatched within 3-4 days to reach to the stores. So that is the thing. That is the time for dispatch to the stores from warehouses. So then finally the merchandise will be available in stores for display and sale by 1st April. So we have seen that how the calendar planning can be made, how the calendar plan can be made. So first what we have done is we have started with 1st April and we have worked backwards the various activities, what would be the time taken, by taking appropriate buffer in each and every activity. So we have went backwards up to the stage of production and then to the product development. So after making all those things, now we have made a calendar plan of time and action with the duration, with start date and end date, starting with the product development, ending with the final activity, that is display of merchandise in stores for sale. So this is a simplified example of how the calendar plan can be made. So as a matter of fact, the calendar plan can include much more details. It can include the detailed activities and the deadlines and the duration, start date, end date for each of these small activities also. A bigger activity like product development may involve sub activities and smaller activities. For them also you can have the start date and end date worked out. So like that you can make a very comprehensive and elaborate calendar plan. So this is only to illustrate how calendar plan can be made. So this is a very simplified version of calendar plan for the illustration and understanding purpose.